Bienvenidos a la clase de español. Soy Fabio. Welcome back. I'm very glad that you are joining us for another Spanish class. Today, we are going to learn how to ask questions in Spanish. It's very important to know that in Spanish you can ask questions on their own, or you can add specific information you would like to obtain from the other person. That's why we are going to focus on interrogative questions, or Palabras Interrogativas. Are you ready to go? Let's see how it goes. You already are familiar with some of these following questions you've been using when you're learning the language. Let's review some of the basic ones. ¿Cómo estás? Is a very common question that we ask in Spanish. But if you notice, the first thing that we notice when we ask a question in Spanish is that the interrogative question, ¿cómo?, how, has an accent. So from now on, you are going to remember that every interrogative question in Spanish has an accent. ¿De dónde eres? Take a look at this particular question. If you notice, the de is the preposition from, but unlike other languages, the preposition is written at the very beginning of the question, unlike other languages that will be at the very end. So, ¿de dónde eres? Means, where are you from? So be attentive of the fact that sometimes the order matters in these cases when asking questions. So let's review some of the most popular questions. You probably have seen a question also like this. ¿Quién es? Who is this person? All right, let's review some of the questions that you probably have seen before. Please repeat after me, and please also notice that there is an upside down question mark before any of these questions. Did you see the accent written on all of them? That's right. It's very important to know that an interrogative question must always have an accent in Spanish. Let's review the pronunciation. ¿Qué? ¿Quién? ¿Cuál? ¿Cómo? ¿Cuánto? ¿Cuándo? ¿Dónde? ¿Por qué? Do you see a specific information on cuánto? It could be feminine or plural or masculine and plural, depending on what you're asking. Do you know the meaning of these questions? If you don't, let me remind you what they really mean in Spanish. Take a look. ¿Qué? Means what? ¿Quién? Who? You can also use it for plural if you want to ask, who are they? ¿Quiénes? ¿Cuál? Which probably better means which one. And if you want to add a plural, ¿cuáles? That's correct. ¿Cómo? How? ¿Cuándo? When? ¿Cuánto? Again, we have to worry about amounts that they have to match in feminine, masculine, plural, or singular. ¿Dónde? And por qué? Why? Good job. Now let's work on some examples and how to illustrate the use of interrogative questions in español. Are you ready? Let's take a look. ¿Cuál es tu mochila? A lot of times Spanish students are always asking what is really the mean or the difference between ¿qué and cuál? Very simple. When you ask the word cuál, it's because there are other options in the answer, meaning multiple choices. When you ask qué, there's basically the person asking what is something. Are you ready for more? Very good. ¿Cuáles son tus libros? What are your books? So be very careful that you need to be attentive of what kind of question is being asked. The difference in cuál and cuáles is, of course, the use of plural. Take a look. Libros versus mochila. One item versus more than one. So that's how you choose. It's very important to distinguish this. We use this question a lot in Spanish. Yes, ¿qué and cuál are completely different, but it could be a little bit confusing. Just start using cuál or cuáles anytime you know that the answer could come from a different group of choices. Are you ready for more? Let's go. Example. ¿Quién es de Argentina? Who is from Argentina? You will ask. ¿Quiénes son ellos? That will be the plural form. ¿Quién and quiénes has its own singular and plural. Don't forget the accent, of course. More examples. ¿Cuánta tarea hay en la clase de español? Do you remember that I mentioned that cuánta, because its amount has to match with the gender and the number? Here is a good example. Tarea es femenino, and therefore we are going to say cuánta. Good job. ¿Cuántos estudiantes hay en la clase? Estudiantes is masculine, but it's plural. That's why we ask how many students are in the class. ¿Por qué estudias hoy? If you notice, this word por qué is separated. You might have seen the word por qué together, but that means because. That's how we distinguish because and why. Very good. ¿Por qué estudias hoy? Why you study today? Estudio porque tengo un examen. Do you see the difference between por qué and por qué? The difference is not only in the pronunciation, but also in the writing. Good job. Let's continue with our practice with interrogative questions. ¿Cuándo es el concierto de rock? ¿Qué es esto? ¿Dónde están mis libros? If you take a look at these three questions, they are asking for specific information. Very simple. You need to remember what they are asking about. A place, a person, an object, an event, or a location. Very good. So, let's wrap it up and take a look in the screen, all the interrogative questions in Spanish. By this point, you should be very familiar with some of them because we are going to be using in our daily conversations. How to form questions in Spanish? Very simple. Take a look at this example. Carlos está en la biblioteca. Carlos is in the library. The subject is Carlos. The verb is está. So in Spanish, what we do is we start with the verb and then we put the subject pronoun afterwards. That's how we form the question. So instead of saying Carlos is, we ask, is Carlos? So, ¿está Carlos en la biblioteca? Good job. Hay una fiesta en el colegio mañana. There is a party at the school tomorrow. Now, take a look at this sentence. What I did was, I just simply put or wrote the interrogative question at the beginning and at the end. It's the same structure. But did you know what is the difference? Right, in the pronunciation. In the first one, we pronounce hay una fiesta en el colegio mañana. In the question, I will switch to a higher intonation at the end. Hay una fiesta en el colegio mañana. Do you notice the difference in pronunciation? So that's the easiest way to ask questions. Just make sure that the intonation is a little bit higher towards the end. Very simple. How to form tag questions in Spanish? We do have them. Example, take a look. Hay una fiesta en el colegio hoy, ¿verdad? ¿Verdad means, is that right? So the person just simply say, yes, there is, or no, there isn't. Another way to ask the same thing is simply by saying, Pedro está enfermo. No? That implies that the person is going to respond yes or no. As simple as that. So the tag questions are very useful. You can just rephrase the entire thing or just say right, yes or no. Good job. Are you ready to practice? In a moment, we are going to see how to form sentences. ¿Cuándo es el concierto de rock? El concierto de rock es el lunes. So be careful because you need to construct a simple sentence in the response. But most importantly, you need to locate the interrogative question, cuando, so you know that in the response you have to provide a time when this event will take place. Very simple, right? Let's take a look at another one. If you happen to have a preposition like I mentioned before, de donde es él, where is he from, that preposition is tricky because it's at the beginning of the sentence, right? So in the response, I need to include that same preposition. Él es de Chile. He is from Chile. So remember, in English will be completely different order. So next time that you see a question started with a preposition, make sure that that preposition is used in the response. ¿De dónde es él? Él es de Chile. ¿A qué hora es la fiesta? Do you see that a? That means at what time is the party? The response, la fiesta es a las 9 de la noche. So now let's take a look at some questions and some possible answers. Are you ready for that? Yo, if I ask you a question with yo, please make sure that your response will be in the usted or tú form, depending if it is formal or informal. If the question is written in the tú form, the response might be yo, obviously. Let's take a look at he or she, él, ella. The response will be él and ella. However, if the response is nosotros, in the question, like are we students, make sure in the response, yes, you say you are. Or if you are involved in the response, you continue with nosotros. For vosotros, you can respond back saying we. Not that difficult, right? For ellos and ellas, continue using the same pronoun. But be very careful because ustedes refers to are you guys, and they respond we. That's how how we ask questions in Spanish, which pronoun goes in the question and which pronoun should go in the answer. So are you ready for practice? I thought so. Let's take a look at some. ¿Estudias mucho en la escuela? ¿A qué hora tienes el almuerzo hoy? ¿Hay mucha tarea en la clase de inglés? ¿Ellos hablan mucho en clase? ¿Necesitamos los libros para la clase de español? ¿Camino a la escuela? ¿Vosotros bailáis mucho? ¿Usted busca un cuaderno? ¿Ustedes llevan los libros a la clase? ¿Estás en la clase de historia? I want you to take a second to take a look at all these questions and notice if the question starts with a preposition, it starts with a pronoun, or a verb. If they start with a pronoun, make sure that the response will go in the opposite pronoun that we just saw briefly. Muchas gracias. Hasta luego. Nos vemos pronto.